Okay, hi there. In this video, we're going to look at an important idea in labour market economics, namely efficiency wages. So, what do we mean by the concept of efficiency wages? Well, this is basically a theory in labour market economics which puts forward the idea that it might actually benefit businesses, benefit firms to pay their workers a wage that's higher than the prevailing market equilibrium wage for a particular job or occupation. The benefit of doing this might be, over time, with a time lag, an increase in the value of the productivity of workers employed for the business. Well, what might encourage firms to pay efficiency wages? What are some of the potential justifications, commercial reasons for paying efficiency wages? One is essentially psychological, that if you pay a high wage, perhaps above that of a competitor, that might improve the psychology, the morale of the worker, which can have a positive impact on productivity, perhaps measured by output per hour worked. Unlike machines, people can choose how hard they work, and oftentimes the wage rate, the direct financial incentive, can be a catalyst for higher productivity. A related point is point two, that paying high wages, paying efficiency wages, can lead to a higher quality of people applying for new jobs as and when they become available. And if you have a bigger pool of better qualified people, then the business can screen and then select from a better pool of available workers. And over time, of course, the average productivity of the workforce and the performance can improve. If you pay a high wage, higher than the market is paying, then in a sense there's an incentive not to be absent from work for one reason or another. Of course, there's always a danger that you get presenteeism, that people spend too long at work, but people stand to lose more in terms of hourly pay if they're absent from work. And that's an important issue. Reduced rates of absenteeism mean there's less need for cover, etc. And crucially, I think this is a really key point, efficiency wages, paying them, can lead to a reduction in labour turnover. If you have a more loyal workforce, fewer people leaving each year, that's going to save the business potentially thousands of pounds every year in terms of the costs of advertising, rehiring, and perhaps having to train new employees. So essentially, I think the point is we're going to focus on things like worker effort, worker motivation, the costs of recruitment come down, it's easier to retain workers. Ultimately, if labour productivity goes up, perhaps in excess of the premium wage you're paying, then that can have a positive effect on the bottom line for a business, which is the firm's profitability. A couple of examples of in the news recently that was linking to efficiency wages. There's a big debate at the moment about whether firms should pay the living wage. Of course, this is optional in the UK. On the right-hand side, the Edinburgh City Council, back in March of 2021, has announced that all of their staff will receive at least the Scottish Government living wage as part of their base rate of pay from the 1st of April. And quite a few councils across the country are now introducing living wages. In fact, Danone, the global yogurt company, recently became the 7,000th business in the UK to be accredited as a living wage employer. IKEA is a living wage employer, but there's a risk that they may lose their accreditation because they said there may be a hold on pay, and they may not be increasing the hourly living wage by 20p per hour as the Living Wage Foundation has suggested in the autumn of 2020. But IKEA, in theory, is a living wage employer, but of course you have to increase the wage each year by what's recommended by the Living Wage Foundation. So which topic areas might the efficiency wage concept be used in? Quite a few, actually. I think if you get an exam or an assessment question on minimum wages, for example, typically students talk about the impact on unemployment and inflation and etc. and profits. Well, you could bring in the efficiency wage idea in terms of evaluating the economic impact of a minimum wage going up. If productivity improves as a result of higher pay, that can help dampen and offset some of the negative effects on inflation of higher wages. You may well get a question and assessment on monopoly power in the labour market. Big employers who in theory have significant power when they're employing people The theory suggests that monopoly employers pay less than the market equilibrium. Of course, efficiency wage theory would suggest otherwise. Indeed, a growing number of firms with big buying power in the labour market are living wage employers. A monopolist doesn't necessarily have to pay a monopoly wage. They may believe in the minimum wage. According to Living Wage Foundation, for example, a full-time worker on the living wage would receive about £1,100 a year more than a worker just on the basic national minimum wage. And finally, the third point is the important concept of the principal agent problem. It's often quite hard for managers in a business to observe directly how productive a worker could be, and so maybe offering a slightly better than average wage, an efficiency wage, might be one response to the problems and costs of directly observing and measuring labour productivity. So there we go, a quick look at the concept of efficiency wages. If you want to find out more on this concept, simply Google efficiency wage theory. Okay, thank you very much indeed.